It's time to have your say. Welcome back to the Q&A, answering your questions in the wrestling community. It's time for episode 96 of Ask SCW. So welcome back to the channel once again. I hope you're all doing well and happy as this guy. Must admit, I'm loving Happy Corbin so far, and I'll be discussing that as well as many other topics during this video, including the brand new NXT logo it seems that we've got. Is the Becky Lynch heel turn going to work with WWE fans? Is it Chris Jericho's last hurrah at AEW's All Out? And we're going to be talking Extreme Rules as well. Impact Wrestling is all involved here on this particular video, so please like, share and subscribe. If you want to be involved on the next Ask SCW, you can follow me on Twitter, Instagram or Facebook. All should be coming up on your screen right now, or you can drop a comment here on YouTube. Leave the hashtag AskSCW. I know to include it in the next episode and give you a shout out as well. But without further ado, let's get on with our first question this week. And I have to give a shout out to Dylan Ketchum and Supersonic X for the first question, and my thoughts are on the new NXT logo. Well, for those who haven't seen it, here it is. It's different, isn't it? I must admit, I am not really a big fan of it so far, but what I would say is that I don't hate it either. I think there is a chance that it could grow on me in time. It's definitely a lot more colourful than what it was before, but it's going to take me time to transition from the black and gold brand to what we've got now, and of course what will be a new NXT in general. Now, the most recent NXT logo I wasn't actually the biggest fan of anyway. I was much more of a fan of the previous NXT logos that we had, but what I will say is that perhaps in time maybe I will like this more, but on first impression, yeah, I'm not sold on it so far. Next question comes from Austin Whitley. With the new logo for NXT being revealed, what are your expectations for the new NXT? Well, what we're already aware of is that NXT obviously is going to go away from signing the indie talent. We're going to go more for people that are younger than 30 is the belief, more taller athletes as well. People that are looking likely that they could headline a WrestleMania. I suppose it's going to be more hands-on, looking down, from above from Vince McMahon, John Laurinaitis, Bruce Pritchard, rather than just the control of Triple H and Shawn Michaels going forward. So that's what I think we're going to look for in that retrospect. But with this NXT logo change, I would say that it's a lot more colourful. It's a lot more brighter. I think the idea is that perhaps it's going to be a lot of a squeaky clean NXT. Maybe it's looking to be a bit more, I don't know, dare I say mainstream with it. Perhaps the intro of the show won't be, the likes of Poppy, for example, more heavy metal style music. Maybe it'll be more of a commercial sound they'll look to do, like what they've done, for example, with Raw and SmackDown, although I would probably argue with Raw they've tried to do something that's perhaps more modern sounding but doesn't really fit the theme of the show in my opinion. But if you look with SmackDown, for example, AC/DC, it's kind of a bit more of a family friendly, if you want, sound going into the show. So maybe that's what we're going to look to do with NXT also. And perhaps as well with the Capital Wrestling Center, for me that's not really working. You've probably heard that on previous streams already, and I would say I wouldn't be surprised if we see perhaps a change of the guard. Maybe we might see the return to the old sort of Full Sail University style look to NXT, or some sort of look that maybe doesn't look so indie. Maybe this will be, although Performance Center-esque, maybe they might try to make it a bit more where, I don't know, it's a closer transition from Raw to SmackDown, because that way maybe it's more appeasing to the eye at home rather than like this sort of darker lighting. Maybe it's more lighter. I don't know, it's hard to really say at this point, but I think the presentation of the show will be very different. I think that's one thing you can definitely say looking at this logo so far. But just to go back over as well very very quickly, I expect with superstars, like we say, people like Odyssey Jones, maybe like Duke Hudson, those sort of people will be pushed quite highly, although at the early stages we're expecting the top heels of the brand to be Pete Dunne and Johnny Gargano. Not so much different to what we've seen already, but of course the WWE draft is on the way very soon. Maybe superstars like that will be on the way up. If we take it back to like the 2013s and 14s, rather than sign the likes of Sami Zayn's, the Kevin Owens, the Finn Balor's, we're going to see people like Bull Dempsey, people that actually were in there that were trying to get Bull fit for one, but they were people that kind of started their NXT. Those sort of developmental, they're going to be sort of taken from the ground roots up into NXT. It's almost like we are really going to evolve the people we have in there, and they're going to be groomed for Raw and SmackDown rather than taking people from outside of WWE already have kind of got their craft perfected to go to NXT to be presented as that sort of indie top talent. I think WWE will be steering away from that. Next question coming from Jamie. Didn't think CM Punk would return Holmes. Do you think history will repeat itself with Becky Lynch? Vince tried her as a heel before, and the fans loved her so much, he had to book her as a tweener who gradually turned face. Considering her fan reaction on SmackDown, it seems likely. Fantastic question, this one. Now, Becky Lynch is definitely doing a slow burn heel turn, it feels here, and I think this is why it could work a lot better this time. If you look at the last time she turned heel, she did a sucker punch on Charlotte Flair when Charlotte had just won the SmackDown Women's Championship, where everybody wanted Becky Lynch to win that match. It was almost the fans felt her frustration. So what was meant to be a heel turn on a face Charlotte, the fans were actually love to see, you know, a clock Charlotte after this, rather than sort of like accepting that she was in defeat, because Becky had been what felt like held back for so long. It's a much different scenario this time when you look at Becky Lynch, because she's been there, she's done it, she's headlined WrestleMania, she's now gone away obviously to become a mother, and now she's come back, and now she's immediately, you know, buried what's meant to be the, you know, rising star of the women's division, and instantly become SmackDown Women's Champion without really earning it. So the fact now we've kind of got this where she's come out on SmackDown, she's sort of been a babyface, but she said those hidden connotations of, well, you saw how desperate I was to get to the top before, you won't know to what depths I'll go to this time. That was a very subtle heel line that's given there, and of course then we see everyone sort of, you know, try to be contenders and say, right, we want to have a match against Becky Lynch, and Bianca Belair said, look, none of you people really in the conversation, it's between me and Becky. How about I accepted your challenge on an impromptu, you know, challenge at SummerSlam. Why not we do that tonight, where you accept my challenge here on SmackDown? And Becky Lynch was, nah. So you've got these sort of things where the fans would have loved to have seen that match, and Becky's not giving the fans what they want. So if we get this sort of slow transition into this, and it goes against a babyface that fans actually want to see succeed, I think there is a chance that this heel turn can work this time. But of course, there is so many Becky Lynch fans out there, there is a chance that there is still that backlash of it. If, you know, they continually try and try again and it doesn't work, you could be right. They may be forced to have to force her back into the tweener role and then back to the babyface by Royal Rumble. But if it was my personal opinion and the way I was booking it, obviously now we know we've got the match with Bianca Belair and Becky Lynch once again now set, because Bianca Belair is the #1 contender. Have this set for Extreme Rules, maybe not an Extreme Rules style match, that way we can have a clear cheating motivation for Becky Lynch to retain her championship. She screws Bianca out of a clean victory if you want, and that way she retains her championship, and then we see maybe something a bit more clearer outright. Then we go from, you know, rather having this slow burn heel turn to a full-on heel turn. Blame the fans, because that's always a clear way to do it. You just start telling everyone it's their fault and what did they expect and stuff like this, and start doing things for herself, and then we can continue things on. I think then if you can get it to sort of, you know, towards the end of the Royal Rumble time, and that's when you can get Bianca Belair to win that championship back, I think you can have a successful title reign for Becky Lynch, #1, but 2, a successful heel turn, and #3, maybe in the long run, after what happened at SummerSlam, you can make Bianca Belair that star again, because not only then she was a rising star that became champion, she had the setback, she didn't become stale as SmackDown Women's Champion, then she's regained the championship heading into WrestleMania season, beating Becky Lynch, which at that point then when they have a full clean one-on-one match, it then feels like it's a really, really big deal. Wrestling by Waldridge for our next questions now. Do you think this will be the last hurrah for Chris Jericho at AEW's All Out? And do I think that Volta will move to NXT or the main roster, but as a part-time performer? Let's start with Volta, shall we? I think WWE is desperate for that here. I mean, of course, he's dropped now the NXT UK Championship. Volta feels like he would fit the mold of what they want to have as a top star going forward, because Volta has everything in the locker. He's got, you know, a great gimmick, he's fantastic in the ring, he's got the look as well as someone that could be creditable as a champion, as a main eventer as well. So for me personally, this ticks all the boxes, and I wouldn't be surprised if WWE were to try and make this happen. In fact, I would be even less surprised if Nick Khan sees that Volta has no interest in doing so, then they may even put question marks over Volta's future with the company. But I'm hoping I'm very wrong by saying that. It's just how cutthroat I've seen Nick Khan in recent times in WWE, and I've been more spoken about Nick Khan during this particular video. But for me, Volta, I would love to see him as part of the NXT roster. Personally, for me, especially the fact that we see Fabian Aichner and Marcel Bartel, they're seemingly full-time also. I think Volta could even have the Brock Lesnar role. Like you say, it's a part-timer. Come in, become champion, and why not then just be the guy that goes, I'm going to go defend it on takeovers. It could be a really risque kind of way to do, you know, a storyline for him, because fans will be like, well, my champion isn't here all the time and we need to get this belt back for the sakes of NXT. But the thing is though, Volta could be like, well, I take that championship and take it to the UK. Could even be a sort of way where you could even want to combine the NXT and NXT UK titles in unification. Who knows? I'm coming up with crazy ideas that probably will never happen. But no, let's go back to it and say I would love to see it. I think Volta personally, it comes down to him if he wants to come to America or not, whether it's part-time, full-time, or wherever it is. But from WWE side of things, I think they'll be desperate to get him in as soon as possible. Shout out also to Supersonic X, who's also asking about, is Chris Jericho going to retire after AEW's All Out this year? I don't know why, but there's something about AEW where you take what they do and it feels legitimate. It actually feels like if Chris Jericho was to do this weekend, he won't wrestle anymore in All Elite Wrestling. Now, to look at his contract situation, he's aware, of course, according to the dirt sheets, that Chris Jericho has another year and a half or so left on his AEW deal, so he couldn't jump ship anywhere, and he did say during his interview that it would be his last match in All Elite Wrestling. Of course, All Elite Wrestling is the one saying that he would retire afterwards. So it is interesting with that dynamic. Is he sort of more or less saying that, well, I won't wrestle for the rest of the time in AEW, but once this deal expires, I will have one last hurrah in WWE and do a match at WrestleMania? Certainly, I personally wouldn't rule it out, especially after Chris Jericho being on Stone Cold Steve Austin's podcast earlier this year. That was shocking, wasn't it? Remember that? But with the matter at hand, anyway, Chris Jericho has started his commentary role, has been involved with that on Rampage. There is rumours now going around that saying that Jim Ross, according to Ringside News, is going to be transitioned out of the commentary booth on AEW altogether, which means perhaps Dynamite as well and pay-per-views. Is Chris Jericho going to transition and go into commentary full time, and perhaps he will be there with Excalibur and Tony Schiavone? It certainly would make sense. Jericho could play more of a Bobby Heenan style role, and Schiavone can be sort of that lead sort of play-by-play guy. Of course, you know, Schiavone did that famously for years in WCW, so certainly would be no stranger to having that role. So for me, this could be Chris Jericho's last hurrah, but at the same time, I would like to see Chris Jericho have a few more matches in AEW. Of course, you know, there is the other argument. We've had the 30-year celebration. Fans are back. It's a big occasion. It can put over a younger star. So it ticks a lot of the boxes. And when you look at the last time that both MJF and Chris Jericho were in a match that had these sort of stakes on the line, it was for Cody Rhodes to never become world champion or get an opportunity to become world champion. Cody lost the match to Chris Jericho. And of course, MJF could have sort of played his part in that as well, and Cody hasn't, you know, gone back on his word or anything since, so it makes you believe that these terms are legit. So I'm going to say I will hold my full prediction for the predictions video, which will be dropping this week on the channel, AEW All Out Predictions, but what I will say is that it certainly is a possibility, and when you look at all the factors involved in it, I wouldn't be surprised if it happened. I said we'd talk more about Nick Khan. The next question comes from Brian at Craigo. How ludicrous does Nick Khan sound by saying that all WWE programming is great and that Raw could even be 4 hours? I think Nick Khan is trying to become a bigger heel than MJF, I'm just saying it. Nick Khan seems to know how to wind us up, doesn't he, when he's talking, but it's all about the money for Nick Khan. He's seen the money that's being paid for, you know, USA and Peacock and for SmackDown with Fox as well, and all these little deals they've got when we've had the zombies at WrestleMania Backlash, the money they got for advertising that movie. Nick Khan is all about the money. It's cutthroat when it comes to everything else. He sees profit. For me, he doesn't see anything else. If he sees Raw, it goes to 4 hours, he sees the more money that comes in to WWE. And he probably also then sees that fans won't criticise that 3rd hour of Raw anymore, because they'll be criticising that 4th hour of Raw. That last hour will be a right drag. But look, the ratings would definitely go down, but look, the money would come flying in. So this is what he probably seeing the benefit for it. But for me personally, yeah, I agree with you. How ludicrous does it sound? Raw is tough to watch now at 3 hours, and sometimes it can be tough to watch even if it's less. But I do feel a 2-hour Raw will be much more bearable. I find SmackDown a much easier watch on most weeks that I watch it. So I would love Raw to go back to 2 hours. I'm sure you're the same. And actually, to be honest, with AEW Rampage recently coming with 1 hour. It's so refreshing. It's so quick. You blink, you miss it. It's that kind of vibe of exciting television. Raw just feels like it just drags each and every week. So the idea of it being 4 hours, I'll be honest with you, I'm starting to get to the point where if I'd even want to watch it, honestly, if it got to that level. Let's go over Supersonic X's other questions this week. Will Finn Balor be the one to defeat the Tribal Chief? And will Asuka be drafted to SmackDown if she has no creative plans on Raw? Well, let's start off with Asuka, shall we? Personally, for me, as I've said in previous videos, I want Charlotte Flair to be the one drafted to SmackDown because I want them to split up. But Charlotte Flair is the current Raw Women's Champion, so I don't see Charlotte going at this particular time. Like you say, Asuka has no plans on Raw right now, but it would make so much sense to draft her over to SmackDown, and I think it could be a likely draft move that could happen. We've seen Asuka, yes, in the ring with the likes of Becky Lynch previously, but there seems to be some unfinished business with that story there. You can put her and Naomi back in a tag team if you want to go for the tag team titles. You could do a heel turn and have her go against Bianca Belair. She has great matches with Sasha Banks, and we've got young talent like Liv Morgan, as well as Zelina Vega. We've even got Carmella on there, which I don't think we've seen her face before. So there's lots of potential matches that we could have there. And let's not forget the NXT call-ups, the likes of Toni Storm, Shotzi Blackheart, Tegan Nox. It seems like a much fresher environment for Asuka. So for me, I would be in favour of that draft move if it was to happen. As for Finn Balor being the one to defeat the Tribal Chief, sadly not. No, I don't see it happening, I'm afraid. Finn Balor, I'm so pleased he's in this position. I hope he gets a great lengthy match with Roman Reigns, whether it is on SmackDown or on pay-per-view. But no, the Tribal Chief is retaining. I don't see Roman losing the Universal Championship for a long time to come, especially when there's a match with Brock Lesnar also on the horizon. Which leads nicely into the next question from Beyond the Ring podcast. Who do you see Roman Reigns defending his Universal title against at Extreme Rules 2021? It's a very good question because we've got numerous options here. Finn Balor, of course, was an obvious one we thought before, but he's made the challenge for this week on SmackDown. At the time of recording, still not been fully announced one way or another if that match will be accepted, or if it's more likely, in my opinion, to become a six-man tag with Finn Balor and the Usos against the Bloodline, and that could lead then to perhaps a championship match further down the line if, Balor was to beat one of the Usos to win that six-man tag match, and then you've got both of those title feuds set going forward. But there's also the idea of Brock Lesnar being in the background. Now, I've said previously, I think this match will be at Crown Jewel between Reigns and Brock Lesnar, but there's also another potential that could happen because Edge and Seth Rollins have said they're both focusing on the Universal Championship. So will we get Finn Balor on SmackDown, closed chapter, we get a triple threat match with Reigns, Edge and Seth Rollins at Extreme Rules, and then we get Reigns versus Brock Lesnar at Crown Jewel. The possibilities are endless. At this point, if I've got to stick my money on it, because Finn Balor has said that he will have the match on SmackDown and not wait for the pay-per-view, I'm going to stick my money and say an outside bet. I'm going to go for Edge and Seth Rollins as the triple threat match, just purely because both of them are focused on the title. And it's great to see, by the way, a lot of focus, a lot of people wanting to challenge for the championship on one show, because we're stuck seeing these same feuds, month after month after month. On SmackDown at this moment, it really feels fresh with a lot of contenders going after the Tribal Chief. FAF Wrestling with the next questions now. What match do you see as the main event of Extreme Rules? And also, after Darby, who does Punk feud with? I see him, Adam Page and Bryan Danielson feuding with the Elite. And by the way, keep up the great work on the killer content, man. Thank you so much, and yourself as well. If anyone hasn't already, go to FAF Wrestling on YouTube. Fantastic content. You won't regret it. Go and check it out, like it, and also subscribe to the channel as well. So the main event of Extreme Rules this year, well, you can't look past Roman Reigns. He seems to headline most, if not all, pay-per-views, it seems, these days. Roman is the headline act, so whoever Roman will be facing of those potential superstars I gave, that's what I expect could be the main event. I do feel there's a chance, though, that we could get Becky Lynch and Bianca Belair as a main event of the pay-per-view, as this time it would be a full, lengthy match rather than giving us a 26-second squash match at SummerSlam, that big shock value. You know what you're getting if they have a pay-per-view match this time. So there is a chance that could main event the show, because then as well, Becky Lynch is back. She's, it was a big draw. She was main eventing pay-per-views before she left as well to become a mother. So there is a chance that could be the case, and then Roman could be the opening match, as Roman, apparently according to inside knowledge, likes to be the opener of the show or the main event of the show, doesn't want to be anywhere else in the placement. So That would be my expectation really, but if I had to predict outright now, I'd say whoever Roman Reigns will face Extreme Rules, that will be the main event. I really like your suggestion of the 6-man tag, and I wouldn't be surprised if CM Punk was to go straight for the Elite, because that seems like the big money match. Why waste time giving it to us? CM Punk against Kenny Omega would feel like a really big deal. One other sort of feud I wouldn't mind seeing would be Jon Moxley. I can't believe I didn't mention it on my previous video here of 5 people I'd like to see CM Punk face. It just shows how many people I want CM Punk to face in AEW. But Punk has said he's wanted to work with some of the younger talent, so to throw a prediction out for you right now, he will eventually not have a feud with Chris Jericho. I'm gonna go for MJF. That's who I think CM Punk will feud with next in All Elite Wrestling. Corey Beatty with our next set of questions now. When do you think Hangman Adam Page will return to get his revenge on Kenny and the Elite? Question 2, who will Paul Heyman choose? Roman Reigns, the Tribal Chief, or Brock Lesnar? And question 3, do I think that CM Punk will be just as good in the ring now in AEW than he was when he was in WWE? Let's start with CM Punk, shall we, as he was actually featured in our last question. We do have to be open-minded that, of course, it may not be the same CM Punk that we saw 7 years ago in a wrestling ring, but of course, if you go with Steve Amell, of course, Seth was training with CM Punk earlier this year. He said that CM Punk hadn't missed a beat, so I think we should remain open-minded that it may take a bit of time for CM Punk to fully get the groove back, but at the same time, I do think CM Punk wouldn't be going back into it if he didn't feel ready, and I think that with Darby Allin, Summit's win to throw his body, put it on the line, I think we're going to get a great match at All Out, and I'm really looking forward to seeing it. But yeah, I should say we should keep an open mind, but I do expect to see the similar level of what we saw with CM Punk previously, if not exactly the same. As for Hangman Adam Page, well, I mean, Full Gear could be the position that he could return in to get that match with Kenny Omega. We know right now that Hangman Adam Page has been written off of AEW because he is about to become a father for the first time. So just like Jon Moxley earlier in the year, Hangman is taking some time off, and judging the amount of time that Moxley was off was around about 4 to 6 weeks or so. I imagine by around Full Gear, that's the time that we will get Hangman Adam Page back within AEW, so I could see that would be almost like a perfect placement to go against Kenny Omega at that point, especially as these two were in the final of the Eliminator tournament that took place at Full Gear last year. So to get their revenge the one full calendar year later would almost feel bittersweet, especially if that's the place that Hangman Adam Page could become AEW World Champion. And last but not least, when it comes to Paul Heyman, of course, he's going to choose the Tribal Chief. I don't see why he should go back to Brock Lesnar. We've got something, a big fresh dynamic here. If he was actually betray Roman and to go back to Brock, we would lose a babyface Brock, something we've not seen since the noughties, and then we'd lose the Tribal Chief gimmick that we've got right now with Roman Reigns. He'd go back to being the babyface. So I like the dynamic as we have it. Paul Heyman right now, you know, screwing over Roman Reigns to go back to Brock Lesnar, for me, doesn't add up at this particular point. I'm loving the direction, in fact, the storyline, the fact that the Usos had doubt in Paul Heyman this week on SmackDown. It was a really fun direction they took that with Paul Heyman, because he was frightened of Roman Reigns, of the reaction he was going to get. He almost felt he wasn't worthy to be out there with the Tribal Chiefs. You can see Paul Heyman has chosen his side already. I think he will stick with the side, but the fact that we may get in a storyline that teases all the way between Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar fighting, if Paul Heyman really is on the side of Roman Reigns, I think that could be a fantastic story, but I expect Paul Heyman to remain with the head of the table. Lorenzo Correa over the next 2 questions now. What do you think about Seth Rollins saying, be more like Edge? New gimmick or different presentation for Seth? And do you think that WWE are high on Finn Balor once again? He's on many of their poster commercials as of late. Great questions. With Seth Rollins, I don't think it'll be a different gimmick, perhaps like you say, a different presentation, maybe just a different direction as this feud with Edge continues over the next few weeks on SmackDown. Like I said, I wouldn't be surprised if both of these find their way into the Universal Championship picture come Extreme Rules, as that's what they want to see. But with Seth, it definitely was a bit creepy, it definitely was a bit weird, but I like it. I like the fact that he's been called Edge-like on Road to the pay-per-view. He said he'd done everything that Edge did, but better, but now he wants to become more Edge-like. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what it's going to lead to. I'm not so sure at this particular stage. Maybe we'll find some more Brood references going forward. Maybe different points that we've seen throughout Edge's career. Maybe we'll have to wait and see what's going to lead to. But maybe we can get some Seth heads. Do you remember we had with, we couldn't get it now with the Edge heads with Ryder and Kurt Hawkins, but maybe something along that line. Seth Rollins takes these different things he does week in and week out to try and, wind up Edge at this particular point and to see himself as Edge Knight throughout the career. So yeah, I'm interested to see where it's going to lead to, but I don't really have any proper guesses at this particular point, but certainly it keeps things fresh and exciting with this feud for the next few weeks. As for Finn Balor, I think WWE are high on him again, but I do think that this is going to be kind of short term of what they're going to do with him and Roman Reigns. I still wouldn't be surprised that when it comes to the draft that Finn automatically goes over to Raw, because then Finn versus Bobby Lashley seems like a good potential feud that you could have for the WWE Championship. I think right now they kind of felt Roman versus Balor feels like a really good match that they could put together, and these two have wrestled in WWE a few years ago when Finn was on Raw previously, so this could be a match they could do again, make a decent story out of. But the question is it going to be something that's going to be just 1 or 2 weeks on SmackDown, or is it going to lead to the pay-per-view? But do I think WWE is high on Balor? I think they're high to him to a point that they can put him in championship matches. Do I think he'll be the champion though and remain in the main event picture long term? Sadly, I still don't feel that, but hopefully he can remain at least upper mid-card, because I'd hate to see Finn kind of go relegated to sort of opening matches or openers on pay-per-views, because Finn Balor for me is worth much more than that in WWE. Mike, a Tanhabs Mike here with the next 2 questions. With Brock Lesnar's new WWE contract, do you think one of his matches will be versus Bobby Lashley? And what is one wild prediction you think might happen for the rest of 2021? Great questions there, Mike. Well, we know Brock Lesnar has got 8 matches, I believe, on his WWE contract, and I believe it's meant to run through for about a year and a half up until WrestleMania 39. You would expect that Bobby Lashley has to be one of those matches. I hope WrestleMania next year, but of course, at the moment, they're both on different shows. Brock has returned to go on SmackDown after Roman. Bobby Lashley, of course, is WWE Champion on Raw. But a lot can change between now and then. Championships can change hands. People can change shows. We've got a WWE draft coming up, so we'll have to wait and see. But I expect that one of those 8 matches, yes, will be Bobby Lashley. We will eventually get this dream match. As for a wild prediction, let's go really outside the box here. Of course, I mentioned the WWE draft in the last question there. What if a lot of superstars went to Raw and Raw actually becomes interesting? Certain superstars like Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn, we mentioned Finn Balor, certain superstars that go over, and especially ones that are quite good at the talking there, like I mentioned there with particularly Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn, and actually add a bit of flavour to this show. And I think that Raw could perhaps become not the A show again, but certainly could become a lot more watchable. So there we go. There's a wild prediction that Raw becomes more watchable towards the end of 2021. I actually can't believe I'm saying that one myself. Next question coming from a Brit Wrestling Fan Podcast, BWF. Do you think Adam Cole would be making a mistake going to AEW? With the talent they've brought in, could he be lost in the shuffle? Really interesting question, this one. And of course, it's a very interesting take on this, because like you say, a lot of superstars are coming into AEW. Adam Cole coming in, could he get lost in the shuffle? Could, it be a case where CM Punk, Bryan Danielson have made a bigger deal of? We've seen Malachi Black as well, Andrade El Idolo come in as well. Do you think that some of the shine's been taken off of them already with these other stars potentially coming in? Would Adam Cole be a thriving top main eventer that we know he can be in AEW? Well, on the flip side, I'm going to answer this question by asking another question. What happens to Adam Cole if he goes to Raw or SmackDown? Does he get lost in the shuffle on there? Because Adam Cole, in my opinion, doesn't become a main eventer on those shows. You look at the main event scene, and Vince, liking bigger guys, wants to transition from what NXT is. Adam Cole doesn't really fit the mould. He can fit the mould of perhaps a good Intercontinental Champion, maybe United States Champion, but some of those championships can be overlooked. Let's look at the IC title. Shinsuke Nakamura, also a former NXT champion, wasn't even featured on the SummerSlam card, unless you take the entrance into consideration. There was no match or no defense of that championship. So Adam Cole, would he get lost in the shuffle on WWE? You'd hate to see him chasing the 24/7 championship. You'd hate to see him become like a Ricochet and, taking someone that's looking extraordinary, does things out of this world, to be stuck on main event each and every week, or even worse, being buried in 50 seconds, to Karrion Kross on Raw, even though they probably did Karrion Kross a lot of favours in the end, really, especially with that new look. And of course, if you want to know my thoughts on that, go and check out the previous Q&A I did earlier this week. But looking at it, to answer your question, I do think Adam Cole will be fine if he was to go to AEW. In fact, I think he'll be more successful than if he was to stay in WWE, because on Raw and SmackDown, I think that he does get lost in the shuffle. He's not what Vince is after. In All Elite Wrestling, he's with his buddies, he's with the Young Bucks, he's with Kenny Omega, his partner Britt Baker is there as well. Yes, Adam Cole may not instantly be world champion, but there'll be a spot on the card given to Adam Cole. I don't think he's going to be someone that's going to go in there and be lost in the shuffle, but I do understand your reasonings for asking this question, because AEW has a loaded roster. In fact, probably too many for what they'd have for all the shows that they have with Dynamite and Rampage to get everyone on there. Certain talents have to be stuck on dark and dark elevation, but I can promise you, if Adam Cole was to go with AEW, he's not going to be one of those. He will be definitely on Dynamite and definitely on Rampage. Next question comes from BC Hunter. If Impact does sign Murphy and Braun as rumoured, do you think it will lead to a large jump in viewership and a possibility of other big names to migrate to Impact? Superb question, this one, and of course moving the needle for Impact is very important right now. I would turn around and argue and say that Slammiversary this year wasn't nearly as successful last year. Some may say that's controversial, but in my personal opinion, you saw all those talents come in that were released from WWE last year. We didn't see as many this year. In fact, arguably, Aiden English and No Way Jose were a part of last year's releases that came in this year, and Jay White is sort of part of the Forbidden Door, yes, but he's not going to be in Impact full time. So you want people that are going to be there full time, that are going to make a difference, that are going to move the needle. Braun Strowman particularly does this if he was to come in, because Braun Strowman, you've got feuds with W. Morrissey that could be quite interesting, going for the Impact World Championship as well. Braun Strowman, before leaving WWE, was going for the WWE Championship a month previously, so this would definitely move numbers for Impact Wrestling. Buddy Murphy, I wouldn't say so much in the short term, but Buddy Murphy definitely could push the needle long term, because he's an extraordinary talent, or I should be saying Buddy Matthews at this point. I believe that's the name he's going to be using going forward, and Buddy also apparently wants to have guaranteed indie dates that he can do, and this would probably rule out the addition of going to All Elite Wrestling. So if they can get these two, this would be amazing. They are rumoured to be heavily trying to get Bray Wyatt as well. Now, if this one really does happen, that really does migrate and move the needle and pushes Impact's viewership up. Do I see all three of those talents joining Impact at this point? No, I don't. But maybe two of them would be fantastic. I think Braun would be an extraordinary signing. In fact, both him and Buddy Matthews would be extraordinary signings, but one for the initial impact, pun intended, that it could have, and the other that it could have moving the company going forward, because Buddy Matthews would be a fantastic future world champion in Impact Wrestling. I think he could definitely carry the load of that company. I think we're going to see the best of Buddy Matthews now he's outside of WWE. But I do stick with my prediction. I think Bray Wyatt will not go to Impact Wrestling. I believe he'll go to All Elite Wrestling straight after Halloween, and I believe that he will become the new leader of the Dark Order, and I think he will lead the Dark Order in Brody Lee's vision. I think that certainly would be something I think would definitely be some of appeal to Bray Wyatt going forward. So that's my prediction of what I think will happen there. But for Impact, if they get these two, as you mentioned in your question, the future certainly is brighter than what it is in this second. It certainly will bring more eyes to the prize. How many though? I'm not so sure. It wouldn't put them on the same level as a WWE or AEW, but certainly for Impact's numbers, yes, I definitely think they will grow. Next question comes from Gary with a G. Who do you think dethrones Deonna Purrazzo for the Knockouts title down the line? Well, I haven't seen Empower yet, so there is a chance that Melina could already be the Knockouts champion at the time you're watching this, but say Deonna Purrazzo retains the championship as I'm expecting, then looking at the Impact roster, I can only see Chelsea Green right now as a viable candidate to become the Knockouts champion further down the line. There is always a potential that we could open the Forbidden Door, again with AEW, and if we would look at that, I think the most popular one people would say would be Dr. Britt Baker, DMD, but I think we've already had that with AEW and Impact, where we've had title versus title, and obviously then AEW having an Impact championship on their roster, and I don't want to see that happen to Impact again. I don't think that does Impact any favours. The only one I could see that currently could fill that role would be Akara Shida, but she's not getting a lot of TV time on AEW at this stage either. So for me personally, if I had to give one answer, I'd hope it would be Chelsea Green. Anthony New with our next question now. Now that AJ Styles and Omos lost the Raw Tag Team titles, do you think it's time for AJ to be back into the WWE title picture? Well, as I'm biased and AJ Styles is my favourite wrestler, the answer is yes. I think, of course, AJ and Omos will go for the Raw Tag Team Championships again in the rematch, because, well, that's what WWE does, and it's particularly what Raw does as well. So there'll probably be 2 or 3 rematches down the line. But no, to be all serious with you, I think that once that's played out, I think that AJ and Omos should remain remain together, but almost should remain the bodyguard at this point. He's not ready to go out on his own quite yet, and AJ Styles can still benefit from having him because he can go back towards that WWE Championship picture. Like we're saying, AJ Styles, he's been a champion before. I think Raw right now is crying out for contenders towards the top end of the card to go for Bobby Lashley. AJ Styles would be a perfect candidate for that, even though he is a heel right now. Heyman, with Omos in his corner, does pose a threat to Bobby Lashley. So for me, it's a match that I'd be interested in seeing. So yeah, I want to see AJ Styles go back towards the WWE Championship picture, whether it is with Omos or without, whether it's a heel or a face. AJ for me belongs up towards the main event scene in WWE. Elijah, the next questions now. Do you think that we're going to get a tag team feud with Cesaro and a mystery against Otis and Gable, of course the Alpha Academy? How do I feel about Happy Corbin gimmick? And do I think that Drew will turn on Damien Priest? There's a rumour then he could go back to his old theme, which Drew does have a good old theme, and we'll give you that. And what do I want to see happen on Raw? Debuts, returns, surprises? For Raw, all of them. Give me something compelling. Give me a reason to need to watch Monday Night Raw. It's a slog. It's been so difficult in 2021. So if they can give me, like you say, returns, surprises, maybe surprises, more cliffhangers and more invested storylines, stuff that goes throughout the show, a start and a middle and an end. Raw doesn't do this enough throughout, in my personal opinion. It's more segment. So for me, I think Raw could do that, and that would definitely improve the show very quickly. And like I say, with more characters earlier in the video that come over that are good talkers, maybe like Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn, and just characters in general, I think Raw could become an easier watch. So I'm hoping that Raw will become at least watchable after the draft this year. As for Cesaro getting a mystery tag team partner, that certainly could be a direction that we could go down. It would be a good way to bring somebody up from NXT, for example, or perhaps someone that's not being used heavily on SmackDown right now. Of course, Cesaro and Nakamura were partners before, but Nakamura now seems to be spending his time with Boog, so that probably is out of the question. But what we've seen usually with this is usually someone faces Chad Gable, looks to get the better of Gable, and then Otis usually causes the DQ finish, and that rest of them faces Otis and then loses to Otis to put Otis over further. So I think that could be probably the more likely direction we get here, but I like your suggestion more. Happy Corbin. I said it at the start of the video, I'm going to say it here. I absolutely loved it. It's my favourite part about SmackDown this week. I thought it was awesome. I love the way he's transitioned through his characters, the way he's gone from the King gimmick to losing everything and becoming desperate and, saying he needs the $100,000 to, be able to get back on track, and then being to the point where he's just desperate and has nothing, has lost everything, the shirt that's dirty, the hair, the beard. He's really committed to those characters that he's been given. Now he's gone back to this Happy Corbin where he's got lucky in Vegas. I think WrestleMania UK said he should be called Lucky Corbin rather than Happy Corbin, which I think is a fair point, but personally, I love what we've seen with Happy Corbin so far. He's been arrogant, he's been, detestable if you want. Now he's got his money back. The fact he wants to buy Money in the Bank outright from Big E, of course he got no luck such thing, but do you know what, I found it entertaining. I love the fact he's got new entrance theme music as well, and just the smile on his face, the pure arrogance and in how he is with Corbin. I can't wait to see where the direction of this character goes next, and I wouldn't be surprised if they want to mix things up, if they find a way where he's been gambling and stuff, that he loses everything again and transitions from A to B, goes from Happy Corbin to Unhappy Corbin. We'll have to wait and see how it's going to go along, but certainly for me, the dedication of Baron Corbin and his character work in WWE is truly underrated. I think Corbin is an unsung hero, and I think a lot of people give Corbin stick. I think here he deserves his praise. He's done fantastic, especially with his most recent work, and I think people are starting to give credit where it is due. And last but not least, with Damien Priest and Drew McIntyre, personally I don't see that happening, but I think it'd be a fun twist. I like Drew McIntyre as a top babyface in the company. I don't think that needs to change anytime soon, but this would take him out of the WWE Championship picture. A mid-card title run would be quite nice, but Damien Priest has just won the United States Championship, and I think Damien Priest is going places in WWE, so I personally don't see this happening at the particular moment, but certainly down the line, who knows, but I definitely think still a fun suggestion. Last question this week coming from Cherry. Jerry, what would it be like having Jackie Chan in AEW? A bit of fun this one, and do you know what, I think it'd be a bit of fun seeing Jackie Chan in AEW in all honesty. I think as a celebrity role, I think it would be fantastic. We've seen how the likes of Shaq and Mike Tyson can be used, and even Snoop Dogg also to good effect. I imagine if Chris Jericho was still a heel and was on the mic, I think he would be loving life having a back and forth exchange there with Jackie Chan to then get sort of a a punch or a kick or some form, to get those newsworthy headlines for AEW. But of course, Jericho isn't sort of in that role right now. He's playing a top babyface. So you can imagine perhaps someone like MJF would probably be quite fitting for that role. If you want perhaps someone that's not so high in the card, maybe someone like Ethan Page with Scorpio Sky, that certainly could be quite fun as well. But of course, they've now got Dan Lambert by their side. But certainly, I think there's definitely some superstars that could be fun in that sort of role. And yeah, if there was an opportunity to see that at some point, I think it could be a lot of fun. But that's all for me this week anyway. Thank you for watching Ask SCW as always. If you haven't seen the last episode that was dropped in the middle of this week, then go and check that one out for you right now. And as well, to let you know what's coming up this week, the live Q&A is returning on Wednesday on the channel. So SCW Live does return, and I'm hoping to keep it back in the live weekly format after that. As well as that, AEW All Out predictions will be dropping on the channel this week as well. I'm hoping to drop them on Tuesday. And like I say, first time watching them, please like the video, share the video, subscribe as well, hit the bell for all notifications, set that to on so you know each and every time a video is released. Drop a comment as well in the comment section, helps the algorithms of the video. It's a bit boring, I know, but it really helps the channel out a long way, and I'll always interact with you as well. So please drop a topic on anything that we've discussed here today on the video, and as well, I look forward to interacting with you with your opinions and suggestions. And of course, if you've got a question as well, then drop in, leave the hashtag AskSCW. I give you a shout out, and also add the question in the next episode. But that's all from me anyway. Thank you for watching. Have yourselves a great day. Check out these videos that's on your screen right now. Take care. All the best. Enjoy your Sunday. You'll be watching SCW here on YouTube.